Hello, everybody. Gail Craft here from the Empowering Process podcast. And today we're having a conversation with Florian Martinon. Yes, he is from France. He is the founder of Communication Flow. And we're going to hold a conversation around being unconditionally loved. This was his struggle. This was his desire. And we're going to talk about what this means to him. So sit back and enjoy, Florian. Hey, everybody, Gail Craft here on the Empowering Process podcast. Join me as I have a conversation with Florian Martinon. I hope I said that right, Florian. And
You did.
yes, he's French, and you will have a little accent that you'll have to deal with. Get over it. We're going to talk about being unconditionally loved and what that meant to him as a child, as a young adult, and when he finally figured out how to find it. And he's going to share his wisdom with us today. Welcome, Florian.
Thank you, Gail, for having me on the Empowering Process podcast.
So we were talking a little bit earlier about some of the things that our parents did. And not with any evil intention, but they did the best they could with the information that they had at the time. And no matter who you are, you're going to mess up with your kids, right? And then it's up to the child to either hold that and use that as an excuse in their life, or alchemize it, transform it, transmute it, and make changes in their life. So your parents loved you, but
But I love what you said about the fact they did their best with the information they had, because I literally made a video. I recorded a video for my parents when I met my wife. I think it was 4 years ago. Because when I met her, she told me exactly the same thing. She said, hey, they did their best with what they knew, talking about her parents. And I realized, oh, mine as well. So I recorded the video crying, and I had these tears in my eyes, and I told them, yeah, yes, there was pain, there was even suffering at some points. Maybe you didn't give me love the way I needed it, but I know everything you did it in my own interest. And so I really love the fact you highlight this. I think it's important for everybody to hear it. And being a brand new parent, well, it's been 2 years now, but I can tell I messed up many times.
and you are aware.
Yes. Which so I know, I have these journals in which I write everything I messed about, and when it will be back to me, then I can tell him, I know it's written right here. I
So
don't
what are
really do
some of the
that.
experiences you had growing up with your parents that made you search for unconditional love?
Well, I think it's important to talk about the relationship my parents have together as a starter, because I grew up in an environment in which my father prioritized his work all the time. So he was working all the time, not just because of or to get more money, because basically he would work more and get the same amount of money as if he didn't. So he just loved his job. He was there all the time, somehow leaving my mother and me alone when I was born. Then I have three sisters, brothers and sisters. Definitely my parents have a relationship I would define as weird, because I think, what are they doing together? Can you tell me again? And I felt somehow left aside by my father. And then, as my mother was in a deep pain and suffering, she went through depression and things like that, I felt like I had to take responsibility for that and help her when my father wasn't there. And I remember my mother telling me many times, stop taking responsibility for your brothers and sisters. It's our job, your father and I, and my job. But I felt like I did a poor job at this. So, and I was a kid. I was 4 when I became an older brother, and yeah, so I took responsibility, and I told my wife many times. I grew up, to me, at least in my perspective, I grew up in an environment in which I had to do everything by myself, including giving myself love, because my mother could hardly do any better at giving love to a child who was sick all the time than by ending her contract. She stopped working to take care of me. And, and by having a father who told me, hey, get this done by yourself. I'm not teaching you, which somehow meant you can do it. I believe in you. And it's a matter of interpretation. But as a kid and growing up, I just thought I feel so alone. And observing their relationship that looked very toxic at the time, because my mother wanted more of my father in her life, and my father would just run from any kind of conversation, but they would still stick together. And this has affected me in a very interesting way now that I see it, because I went through toxic relationship for a lifetime. And I only recently, I think 5 or 6 years ago, said stop once and for all to this dynamic of staying together no matter what, not supporting each other, but that's how a relationship works. It's arguments all the time. That's a relationship. Uh, and I said, I don't want that anymore. I need to love myself first, because otherwise I'm just giving others opportunities to devalue me, to uh, damage me and break me sometimes, because I'm doing it myself. I'm not loving myself unconditionally. So I'm always making more efforts to be loved, which my mother did, or I just run from anything that's annoying, which is what my father did. And yeah, so I think that's how the lack of unconditional love really affected my life. Is that
So
does
it's
that
really,
answer your
so
question?
it's really interesting. So I wrote down, taking responsibility. I remember at the age of 2, making the decision, because we make decisions that also affect our life as children. So it's not only the programming, but our decisions. And I made a decision to be responsible at 2 for the balance in my family. I was the baby in the family. And the youngest next to me was 9 years older than me. And I was taking responsibility for the family. So by the time I hit 6 years old, my sisters were all either they were in school, in work, or dating. The rest of them were married and out of the house. So I was home alone. My father worked nights. I was home alone all of the time. And so I took responsibility for myself. And so I had the same thing as far as, not getting that nurturing that we need in order to flourish and grow as individuals. And so at some point, we either recognize that and use it as an excuse as to why you can't do anything, which many people do, and that's their journey, or recognize it and figure out how to alchemize it. And I really want to talk about that with you right now, because that process, although it sounds magical and mystical, it's not. It really is what we're here to do, guys. Right? What that means is that you take it and you own it and you love it, and then you take that energetic attachment, and that's what you're alchemizing. You're releasing the resistance in your body. So talk to me about when and how did you recognize that this was going on? So you mentioned it, you realized, but how did you realize it? And then what did you do to make changes in your life?
Well, first of all, I want to say I agree with you. It's not as magical. It is magical when we own it, when we know how to deal with it. But until then, it's just a pain in the neck. It's really painful. It's like, okay, why is this happening to me? And back in 2019, I had the opportunity to learn about emotional intelligence, which mostly allowed me to put words on my feelings and understand that there was an underlying dynamic that could be explained, because I would just usually observe, okay, I know there is an underlying dynamic, a quantum dynamic, whatever we call it, energetic one. I could see it in others. And when I started learning about emotional intelligence, I just thought, screw others, in the gentle way, meaning it's all and only about me all the time. And I'm going to take an example with altruism, because it's a funny one. I love how altruism works. Most of the people I know, at least, think altruism is about giving everything away all the time or most of the time. And I have a good laugh now when I hear this identification to altruism, because I think, hey, if you like it, or if it confirms who you are, or if you get any benefit from it, conscious or unconscious, then it's not total altruism. There is an interest behind it. And the way I learned to deal with all of this lack of love and whatever it is, by the way, it can be money as well, or abundance for some people, so it can be scarcity, was to observe a lot more and feel into things. So I know it looks very abstract, but before we had language. So the brain is made in a wonderful way. There was the reptilian brain, which is about fear and survival. And then came the limbic brain, which is about emotions, feelings, and even memories. And only then comes the cortical brain, language, putting words on things and all of that. But I realized I had that tendency to only go through cortical brain. So it was, I feel something, I'm not totally denying it, but I'm just locking it down and saying, it doesn't matter. Let's make sense out of things. And going through this emotional intelligence training and meeting other people and always thinking, okay, if I have a reaction to this, it means something to me and only me. Others cannot feel what I feel. They can imagine what I feel, but they cannot even feel the intensity. So even though you would imagine, oh, I know what fear feels like, you know what it feels like to you, I know what it feels like to me. And I had to learn how to deal with that. Okay, what is it that I am feeling? And allow my brain to process that, which usually I didn't do. It's so my brain and my body and my whole energies. One thing I think is important to share here is the triangle of transformation, which I think is really great. It's first awareness, and it works with any kind of problem or issue or uncomfortable situation. Awareness of the whole situation. So not only the consequences that we observe, and that's easy, but also the causes. What took me there? Then acceptance, and this is what I struggled with most of the time. It's acceptance, which is what I mean when I say I had to really feel it. No judgment behind it, just, okay, that's what I feel. If I think about this, if I feel that, it's true, or at least it's my truth. And let's stop denying it, and let's stop trying to solve or fix it. It is that it is. I need to sit with that. Most of the time I cry about situations. I know I look tough, but I cry a lot. It's the acceptance
Oh, Florian,
moment.
I cry every day.
I can imagine that. And, and when this is done, that's the interesting part. It's once this is done and I'm done crying, which literally at a chemical level and physical level in the body, tears are filled with toxins. So when we cry, we let go of what was dark, or toxic, or uncomfortable. It's an interesting process, even at a physical level. And I learned to go through that and say, okay, I am allowing myself to cry or think I cry. Sometimes the tears would not come because I would still resist. But once this was done, every single time I could feel the relief. And then the third and last step in this triangle is take action, which sometimes is just a new decision to get away from the old pattern, get away from the old ways of doing things, and say, I tend to tell myself that a lot. It's, I do not know where exactly I'm going most of the time, but I know what I am not allowing anymore in my life. And when it comes to love and relationships, because this is my this was my biggest struggle and hurdle. When it came to relationship, it was never again will I allow any relationship to be about provoking each other instead of expressing with I statements. I feel that, I need that, and all that. So that's one thing. Then never allowing anyone to literally slap me in the face for any reason. I don't want physical violence anymore. And I don't want my biggest trigger, which led me to quit and yeah, run from any relationship, would be humiliation. That was a recurring process that I found myself in public spaces being insulted, and not just, hey, you're dumb, or you're stupid, or you're an asshole, but, yelled, yelled at, like, you're an asshole. And in the middle of public places, this feels really bad. And yes, that's basically the process I went and go through, and the boundaries I had to set for myself. And interestingly, boundaries are not fixed. And what I mean by that is, you might say it once. That doesn't mean it's not coming back to you again and again and again. And then it becomes a habit to say, whoa, I have a boundary there. You can touch it. It's okay. But don't smash it. It won't work. At least in my experience.
I want to share a boundary story with you. I have a dear friend that he and I will connect with each other from time to time, and he had a conflict with his wife, and he called, and one of the things he said is, she knows my boundaries and she crossed it. So I'm listening and I'm kind of laughing to myself. And so when he was done, I said, so you not only let her cross the boundaries, you let her set up camp and start a campfire inside your boundaries, right? That's not her fault. That's yours. Boundaries have to have consequences. And so this is my boundary. Please don't cross it. If you cross it, this is how I'm going to respond to you. Right? And it could be as simple as, you need to chill. I need space. We will be back in 5 minutes. I'm going out on the deck. You go in the kitchen. See you in 5. Right? Or whatever you need, but that is saying that what's happening right now is not cool with me. You have to set your own, boundaries, stops. I don't know what they would be for you, but it's really important for people to, number one, express and understand what their boundaries are. And number two, know what the consequences are. Otherwise, you don't have boundaries. You have a wish, but not boundaries. So I love that you don't tolerate stepping outside your boundaries, if you will. I want to let folks know that from my perspective, I've met Florian only in the past year. So I only know him as pure love. The guy is love, 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 love. So,
Thank
he
you.
has taken this and elevated it to being part of who he is. Right? So what are some of the boundaries that you have, if you don't mind sharing them? And how do you, from a space of love and caring, express that, ooh, you just crossed it?
Uh, One thing that's important about boundaries in the way we communicate, generally speaking, I think, is it's not going to be perfect all the time. And I'm saying this because I became extremely good at communication. I was good already, and I had to become even better because I had a relationship with someone I would say was a narcissistic pervert. At the clinical level, what I mean by that is I'm not into the victimhood of, oh, I was manipulated by that person. No, I asked myself, what was the first time I made or didn't make a decision that allowed the whole situation to set up and take place, right? But she could literally never take responsibility for anything, let's say wrong, even sometimes it didn't matter, but wrong she was doing, and even twisting the facts to make me wrong. So I practiced by asking a lot of questions instead of expressing myself. It was, okay, I'm going to be so interested in what she is going through that there is no way she can trigger me. And if ever this was happening and I felt triggered, then I can just observe it, say, okay, I feel that, but now is not the time to deal with it. Now is the time to be listening to what the other person has to say. And I had that very deep moment when I stood as a communicator for 5 hours in the same day, in a row, actually, 6 hours total and five in a row. And it was so exhausting, but so enriching as well, because then I was empowered with the possibility to react immediately or delay. So that's a whole other topic, but I think it's interesting to mention anyway that it's not going to be perfect all the time, even though you have the best training, even though you practiced for years, even though you practiced in the worst conditions ever. It's not going to be perfect all the time because everybody can be tired. Everybody can have that sense specifically sensitive point or aspect that immediately triggers a reaction. But the way I set boundaries is by knowing myself, and being interested in others as much as possible. Mm, I consider there is a reason behind every action or reaction. And even narcissistic perverts do have a reason to be the way they are. And when I broke up with my ex-girlfriend, I had to let her strangle me because we had that physical fight. She could not take the, hey, there is no fault. She couldn't manipulate me in any way because I was okay with everything. So she ended up jumping on me and attacking me. And I fought back, but you can't win against these people. A win now means you lose later, because what she would have done if I really unleashed myself, she would have gone seeing the doctor and the police and depositing a complaint, whatever, and it would have been more trouble. So I could not win, and I learned that I don't want to win. What I want is to get out of it. And how do you do that? You understand what they want, and as much as possible, give it to them. This was my self-talk. I'm not telling you or anybody what to do. This was my self-talk. Give them what they want. Stop being right, proving yourself right or better, giving advice, whatever it is. Learn to be interested in others so much that you can become them without ever forgetting what you want for yourself. And a great way, I think, to set boundaries when I started at least, was, is this really what I want? And it's that simple. Is this really what I want? Yes, cool. But then why do I have to ask myself? right? So most of the
I
time,
have to ask myself from time to time, what is it because it changes, Florian.
yes.
As I change, what was important to me yesterday is meaningless today, right? And I have more meaningless things than ever before right now. Um, and so it's very interesting in relationships and in communication. I want to get to communication because that's what you do, right? Um, one of the problems I faced when I was in corporate and went through communications. And by the way, if you're listening, I'm doing air quotes and I'm getting bubbles. Communication training, all I was taught is what language to use, what words to use in a given situation. It had nothing to do with how to diffuse the situation or how to really communicate with someone. And I remember in the last job where I finally got fired from, by the way, which was awesome, we had gone through this communication training. And I remember talking to someone who was a narcissist, by the way. I had a couple of leaders I had to report to and work with that were horrible. And he said, "Oh, I'm so glad that you're now learning how to communicate." And, what came to my mind, Florian, was two words, and it wasn't happy birthday, right? 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 And I thought, no, you learned how to listen for about a week or two. And that's how long those training sessions last. Such a waste of time. So you talk about communication flow, and flow is like my baby. I love flow. And so let's talk a little bit about what communication flow means to you. And you work with individuals and businesses on this particular subject. So, so what does it mean to you, and what is the value that they get out of this, which is different from the type of training that I got?
I hope so. I I think that this approach to me is unique in that I am not telling people, I can't tell people what to say or what to do, but I rather ask them first, okay, what do you think you should be saying or doing? This is the effect it has on me. Is that the kind of effect you are looking for on others? Then offer options. And I explained that to someone, I think yesterday or 2 days ago, that there are, I think, basics like what is fear? The way I was explaining fear is either there is a danger or an unknown situation, but it's kind of the same because if you don't know something, it's a potential danger. And I think there are some basics that are cool to know like that, because then I can ask myself, okay, do I feel like there is a danger in doing this or that, or do I lack information? So do I need to protect myself or to project myself, right? And that's very interesting as basics to have. But my approach is more, okay, it's from me to others, and it's an intention, actually. That's how I would sum that up. It's an intention for myself and for others. Okay, what's more important for me right now or today or whatever it is? So I'm going to give a quick example. I think it was yesterday my wife and I argued because I did something she would have done a different way. And because she lacks sleep and she's very stressed about some situations these days, she immediately reacted. Oh, you've done that. I didn't want you to do it and all that. And my intention was to save her time and energy by doing that. And I felt triggered because I thought it was not on my schedule. I had other things planned at this moment, but I took a full hour to do that for her. And I had the intention to help, and I was just frustrated, and I felt it's unfair that I invested more of my time and energy for her, and she just attacks me in return, And it's easily I could have been triggered, but I just wanted that to be helping to her. And I wanted that to just allow us to do something different. And back to my intention, it was, okay, do I really want to argue about that? No, okay, I made a mistake, if we might call it mistake. I don't think it was exactly that, but her point of view is, I made a mistake, I should have done things differently. Okay, cool. Now the whole point is, I have more information for her. So I got the debate back to, okay, I get it. Now I have more information. Do you want them? And she took it back to, you made a mistake and all of that. So I said, fine, no conversation is possible now. Deal with your thing. I have things to do. I didn't use a nice tone because I was triggered, but the intention was that it was, okay, I don't have time and energy for that. I could, I don't want that. I want us to be able to have this conversation. And to me, communication flow is around this. It's that ability to adapt at any moment, saying, okay, what's my intention now? Do I really want to be doing this at this moment and in these conditions? And from that, do I want to listen? Do I want to express myself? Do I want to express myself in that specific way? So it could be, hey, you don't take my perspective into account, and that's very unfair, and that's mean from you, and it could have been that, but it was just, okay, I think I told her that. I said, I think it's unfair because I took my time and energy to save yours today, and you attack me. I feel like I am attacked, at least, and I don't like it, but it's still not the right time to talk about it. We have our own things to get done. And that's my approach. It's really that adaptability all the time. You can express things and express them well and set boundaries from your own intention and understand others in the meantime, and pick the right timing to have a conversation, and pick the right message or the right words maybe to express your message properly. And it flows because it's, oh, okay, I said something that triggered you. I'm sorry about it. That wasn't my intention to trigger you, right?
So here's the danger in that. And I'll give you a real life example that I lived, right? So a few weeks ago, I did not behave in the most highest of intention, right? And got into an argument, which I never do. It's not me, with my daughter. And so what I did was I immediately went to my space to sit down and analyze what just happened, right? Who are you? And, this has nothing to do with her. It has everything to do with me, right? And what's going on? Meanwhile, she came storming downstairs and said, 3 weeks ago, you blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, I can't respond. It was like I made an expression or something. It was a facial thing, right? And I'm like, I don't even know what she's talking about. So I didn't respond and she left. So I went through, it was very good. I went through my alchemizing process. It took me about a day. And then I thought, rather than address things, she broods on them. Right. And so sometimes we get into a loop where we think we're making space to think of a better way to approach something. And instead, we're actually replaying it. And we're taking this small thing and it becomes a giant mountain. Right. And then, 3 weeks ago, you made a face when I said such and such. Right. Like, I don't even remember you saying such and such. Never mind that I made a face. Right. Okay. I did that. I did. And so I would say from my perspective, if I need to have that space, I have to say, I really want to talk to you about this, but not right now. Give me, and it can't be a day. It has to be a few hours, or, or in the morning or something, but I don't want to sleep on it because I'm just going to make stories up. Right? I'm the type of person who's going to look at me, but most people don't. They take the story and they expand on it, because I know that's what I used to do, expand on it, and it has nothing to do with what actually happened by the time you're ready to talk about it. So what are some of the things that you do and you suggest to people to do in order for them not to fall into the trap of building a story out of what happened and actually getting into a space where they can talk about it and not argue about it?
Well, I think what comes to my mind is a triangle shape with my fingers. So all of my fingers touching each other. And maybe you see a triangle, but if I take that perspective, you just see a hand. Right? So if I turn it around just 90 degrees, it becomes different. And this is exactly what a conversation is like. Even you don't see the same thing. You see my pinky, and I don't. I mean, well, I do, but it's at the opposite of me, and it's closer to you. There is a different perspective between you and me, and different perspective with everybody. So, and even neuroscience has now proven that reality is unique for each and everyone. One reality is not one reality. Well, it is one. It's not all of the realities. It's just one reality. It's my reality. And so I came up with these 5 guidelines, I would say, that I needed to practice for a while. I'm not going to say it is magical when we can use it and when we master this. And so the first one is that no one has a problem. Unless they tell me something is a problem, who am I to say, oh, you have a problem with this or with that? It's like telling an alcoholic, hey, you have a problem with alcohol. As long as they don't consider that the way they drink alcohol is alcoholism and can be a problem, it won't work. So what's the point in telling others you have a problem when they don't see any problem? Then the second one is no one makes mistakes, which involves we all make experiments in life. And yes, sometimes we love the consequences and we might say that's a success. Or we might not like it and say, oh, I failed, I made a mistake, whatever it is. These are just 2 different perspectives. When I don't like something, instead of thinking I made a mistake, I just think I don't like that. What can I do differently next time? And that brings us back to the unconditional love somehow, because if no one has a problem, no one makes a mistake, then I can start loving everything in others and in myself as well. Then the third one is that no one wants my opinion unless it's a conversation like we have here or in the Summit Club on Tuesdays, or any open conversation in which we can really share perspectives. Okay, I can give my opinion because it's my reality, because it's my perspective, and it's welcome. Otherwise, well, if I just gave away my opinion to someone who just wanted to talk and express themselves, then it looks silly to me, because I'm just going to block their process and then create a resistance, which is the opposite of flow. So it's okay, express yourself for as long as you need. When they ask my opinion or when they are done and I want to express it, I ask for permission. Hey, can I give you some perspective or my opinion? No, I don't want it. Okay, cool. Then I don't waste my time giving it to you, right? And if it's, yes, it's cool. It's okay, here's my perspective and the way I see it. And how do you feel about that perspective? Because sometimes it's uncomfortable. It's okay, you trigger this and that, and I hate it. Do you want to speak about it? Yes or no? And then the conversation keeps going. It's a flow of information in that communication. The fourth one is, how do I say it? It's no one likes to be imprisoned. So I offer options. I offer options instead of telling people what to do. I rather offer options. okay, I have a different perspective, and maybe an option of something you can test or try, on your own and give me feedback, because maybe you like some of it and not all of it, and we can still adapt it, which is exactly the way I work with people is, okay, I said something that worked for me before. They might like half of it and not like the other half. And I don't want to force them to do something that doesn't work for them. I want them to adopt it, to own it. So it's okay. What if we tweak the second part, the one that you don't like this? Not exactly okay like that. Oh, yes, that is good. That is great. So instead of telling people, do this, do that, and giving advice, which is related to opinion as well, is okay, I have an option for you. How does it feel to you? And the fifth one is no one likes to feel inferior. So I want to come in the conversation and treat myself as well with that unconditional love and that approach that I am equal to anybody else. So maybe, I don't know, someone is better than I am at marketing or at English or at Spanish or whatever I can think about. Okay, they have more experience in this, but I probably have more experience in something else. So it's kind of equal because we have the same amount of experience in different areas. Or maybe because I don't have the same perspective, I can think out of the box when others are stuck in the box. But if I come in with I am superior and I am going to tell you what to do, how to do it, and all of that, it's not unconditional. It's conditioned by now I want to prove them, show them, be more important. I cannot be humble and I cannot be known, liked, and trusted by people if I approach them with this in mind, in my energy. And and I think that these are really the 5 guidelines I use, and I would recommend anyone to test, because once again, it's something that works for most of the people I talk to, and others will need a different vocabulary, and others will need a different practice. Mine was really harsh because, as I said, I had to stand up for 5 hours listening and only listening and applying this to myself in one day. So I let you imagine what I did for the next few years, how many times I did it.
So we don't know when the opportunity to grow comes to us, but it's always painful. And that's why people avoid it. And I think my brother one time said to me that the only time someone goes to the doctor for an illness is when the pain of the illness is greater than their fear of the pain of the doctor. Right? And so when your pain of what you're in is greater than the pain you think you're going to have, it's only then. That's why people frequently, like, I was down and out, and finally I had to give in. And I say the process of giving in, of letting go of resistance, is where you open up to all of the possibilities. And that's where flow comes. And you're talking about giving in to ego, giving in to expectations. And I wrote down expectations, and that's the word I use with people. If you have expectations when you're going into a conversation, into a dialogue, you either check your expectations or say, I expect this. In sales and actually in communications, when you start off, I started off the conversation with you as this is what I expect to unfold, right? And if you're okay with that, we'll move forward. If you're not, that's fine, right? And so you're not surprised when I ask some of the questions that make you go to places that maybe you didn't want to go to, right? Because I set the this is what I expect. And you can then say yes or no. And that gives the other party, rather than you trapping, so when you talked about the cage, when we have expectations and we don't express them, we are now creating the cage. We're putting people in the cage. And of course, they're going to fight. Any animal put in a cage is going to resist until they give in. And do you want someone to give in? Do you really want that?
That's a great question. Even to I think ask myself when I have a conversation with someone is, okay, do I want to give in and lose myself in that conversation? But the experience I had with that ex-girlfriend strangling me and all of that was extremely powerful, and even in terms of communication, because I had to fight with all I had with and for myself while against myself. And I'm going to explain that quickly. It's when I got to the point when I realized there is no way to win this. How do I step out of it? And she starts strangling me, and I think, okay, I need to show her that she won and she's got the control and she all of that. And I just double tapped her arm, as in fighting combat sports, right? To do that, they're like, okay, I surrender. So I literally surrendered, and that's a very interesting dynamic, because then she stepped away, and my brain literally said, kill her. And it was an inner struggle at this moment, saying, okay, now I have full mastery, because now it's me with me. So choosing to surrender in order to be with me and keep going, and against me at the same time, which meant I had a decision to make. Do I kill her, which I think I could have, or do I let go and do I fully surrender? And I think in a conversation and being with people and also growing unconditional love means if I win or if I lose, I don't make a difference. I still love myself. I did the best I could with what I knew. We're back to parenthood. I did the best I could with what I knew. And now I know even more, and I can keep going and growing by loving myself in every situation, by surrendering when it's relevant to do, and not,
Go ahead.
yeah, and I'm ending the sentence with, and not whipping myself with, don't say anything, hold back, lock yourself down. Just, is this what I want? And surrender.
And this is why language is so limiting. There is a difference between surrendering, because you do that from a choice that you make for yourself, versus giving in. You do that for the sake of the other, for yourself. Does that make sense?
Yes, to me
Like,
at least.
right? I'm going to give in, you win. Versus I'm going to surrender so that we can move forward.
Yes.
Right? Completely different nuance between the two. So I wanted to be sure the listeners heard that and understand when we talk about surrendering, we're not talking about giving in. When I talk about being caged, that's giving in.
And I think there is a lot of power in surrendering that there is not in giving in, because
Yes.
when I surrender, at least, I think, ah, it feels good to not be in that constant tension with and against myself, thinking, I need to win this, I need to win this, I need to win this, and instead make other people express themselves. And at some point, they might even lose against themselves. I love now asking tons of questions, and I often speak about being childishly curious. Kids ask why all the time. Why? I would not recommend asking why because it triggers emotions. But okay, for what reason, or what makes you think this or that, or how did you come to the conclusion that, what do you mean by, and being so interested in others that now it's not an emotional conversation, it's an adult conversation, trying to understand each other, trying to move forward together. And even though sometimes other people don't want to move forward with me, it's okay. I still had fun.
And it's moving forward, right? Without the intention to control. Right. And so we get back to expectations and intentions. I mean, we talked about intentions, expectations, and control, and I mean, it's all so important that why are you going to say that? Why are you going to do that? What is your expectation? Is it to move the conversation forward? Is it to be curious and understand? Or is it to win the conversation? Is it to win your point of view? Right? Because everybody, your feelings, your perspective is valid, but that doesn't mean it's the same as mine. Not gonna be.
Exactly.
It's impossible I'm not in your head. I haven't had your experiences. I don't have your triggers. It's impossible for me to totally understand.
I think it happened to me once, though. I remember one time I had questioned so much with the intention. It was intentional. I told myself, I want to be so good and powerful with this conversation, my communication, and all of that, then that I can literally become someone else. And I could. I had one conversation. I can't remember with who it was, but I remember the feeling of, oh, right now I could be them. Like I can choose. Now I have the whole thought system, the whole energy, the whole, like I had all the information and I could become them. I didn't want to because they were in a situation I didn't like. And I didn't want for myself, but it was, oh, okay, now I know exactly how to reproduce this, and I can embody everything they told me before. And that's such a powerful feeling that it's something I cannot explain.
Excuse me. I mean, we can go down a whole rabbit hole now. And so I don't want to because we don't have time. But there are so many moments in my life where I literally have energetically blended with someone that it's been like going to the stars or to the moon with them, in business and in relationships, in life. It's when energetically you're in such sync that the cogs of the wheel literally lock, right? I had my human design read, and it's very interesting who I am from a human. I mean, I'm a projector, but I mean, the way God sees me, like who I am. And I'm very open to that kind of connection with the other human design people. And it can be a problem or it can be magical. It's one or the other. There's no in between, because I have so much capability to absorb what you are. And so I have to be aware, am I absorbing? Is this really me? Because that's what happened with that argument I was telling you about. That wasn't me. I was absorbing, right? And once I became aware of that, now I need to control that energetically, right? So Florian, you have a company or a business called Communication Flow. And talk a little bit about that and how people can get in touch with you if they want to know more about you and your business.
Yes, my communication flow is more the approach than the business itself. I love just having conversations with people, because then it's both experiencing the communication flow and owning it. Because as I said, I'm going to give the pieces of knowledge a way when it's needed, as it's needed. And I think the best way to get in touch with me is to hop on my LinkedIn profile, discover a bit about what I do, who I am, even though I think this conversation already says a lot about it. And then, yes, why not go further together? And my punchline these days is life is meant to have fun. I see too many people struggling when it can be so much fun. So it's meant to be fun, not painful. And I just want to send that reminder, for people, especially to people who feel in a struggle, painful situation, in the storm and not the eye of it. Life is meant to be fun, and I wish that my work with people brings that. I know it brings money, love, and incredible stories to share with the world. I know that. But I want that to last. I really want my work to last in time. And I don't care about fame, but I care about people and how their life can really be maybe not improved, but different. And they can choose their experience by applying this knowledge and this principle the way they want to do it.
Thank you, Florian. And I will have that in the show notes so people can just get it and click on it. Let Florian know that you met him on this podcast. Not some stranger trying to reach out to him, but saw you on this podcast, want to get to know you, and he'll click right in for sure. So thank you for joining us. This is Gail Kraft from the Empowering Process podcast. If you like this, give us a thumbs up. If you know someone who could benefit from this, do share it out to them. And as always, please do subscribe so you know when the next episode is available. Thank you so much, Florian. Thank you for your time.
My pleasure, Gail. Thank you
Bye-bye,
for having
everybody.
been such a great host.
Thank you for listening to the Empowering Process podcast. Be sure to visit Gail at gailcraft.com to learn more about how she serves thought leaders, entrepreneurs, and goal seekers. And remember, if you like this broadcast, be sure to share and subscribe so you don't miss an episode.